pieces cut and ready to go, I'm going to go ahead and start with my bodice. I have my bodice cut from a lining that has no slashing and spreading done to it, and then I have it cut from our beaded fabric that has the slashing and spreading done to it. I've also got it cut from my lining fabric, which I didn't add any seam allowances to the sides because the lining fabric does stretch, and then I have my beaded fabric, which I do have seam allowance all the way around. Same thing for the sides here. I don't have seam allowance on my stretchy pieces, but I do have it on the beaded section. So I'm going to go ahead and start with our darts, I guess. And I'm going to pin close our darts. If you guys follow me for a while, you know I really don't sew that many darts. Darts are aggravating to me. That's why I tend to turn everything into seams, but I'm starting to try to branch out and do different silhouettes and things for you guys. So you guys will see quite a bit of slashing and spreading and dart sewing and stuff going on. Okay, that's one dart. And you could have definitely took these darts and turned them into an arm side princess seam, but I did want to just go ahead and leave the darts. Less cutting. And for my darts, I am pinning through one side of the dart, and then I'm matching it up to the other side, and then I'm going to go ahead and pin through the whole thing. And I'm not sure if you guys noticed, this is this one done. This dart is larger than this dart because I swung the fullness that was our shoulder dart into this waist dart. This the top of this shoulder dart got cut off, so I didn't have to worry about that fullness. Now that I have my dart pinned, I'm going to work on the back. I'm going to remove this here, and I'm going to make sure that I have beaded fabric, beaded side up, which I do need to go ahead and get all of the beading out of the seam allowance. You could use a hammer and just knock them all off. That's what I'm going to do. Because if you just put this right side together like this and then sew, you're going to be breaking a whole bunch of needles. So I'm going to go ahead and break off all of the beading in all of my seam allowance areas. I might as well do it all now, and I will be right back. Alright, so I've got all the beads knocked off of all of my seam allowance. I just did it for all of my pieces, so I don't have to go back and do it again. And I'm going to go ahead and place these right sides together. I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew with the 1/2 inch seam allowance here. I am going to put this to the side though, because you know, y'all know how I do. I got to prep all of my pieces before I go over to the sewing machine. So to recap, we've got our darts pinned for our bodice lining, and then we've got our bodice back neckline pinned with the overlay and the lining together. Now I'm going to go ahead and how can we do this? How can we do this? How can we do this? So this is my side front piece. I'm going to place my lining. The side with more of a curve is the inner part. Remember that the widest section is the top and the narrow is the bottom. I initially wanted to do this as a long dress, but I didn't have enough beaded fabric, which I thought I did because I had enough to cut it long on my lining, but not enough to cut it long on my beaded fabric. So I'm not sure how that worked out. My beaded fabric must be less wide because I had the same amount of like yardage. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and sew this with the 1/2 inch seam allowance. Don't worry about how short this is because lining is getting attached to lining and outer layer is getting attached to outer layer, so the lining will fit snug and the outer layer will be how it's supposed to be. So like I said, I'm going to sew this with 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm going to put it to the side and prep the rest of my pieces. I have my skirt front piece here. This is the piece that gets pleated down. So we're gonna go ahead and finish off the hemline of this. So I'm placing these right sides together, and I'm gonna go ahead and pin just the bottom. And our back pieces do not require prepping. So this is our first batch of sewing. The darts for the lining, the bodice lining, our neckline for the bodice back, the slit line for the skirt side, and then the slit line for the skirt front. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew all of these, and let's go over to the sewing machine. I'm starting here with our back pieces. I'm sewing the neckline. You wanna really be on the lookout for beads. So this is what it looks like when the darts are sewn. I have my front slit piece, and I also have my back pieces, the necklines sewn on those. And then I also have the slit line sewn on my my skirt front piece here. So we're gonna go ahead and put everything to the side, and we're gonna start working on our bodice. I will give you guys an advice. If you're using Lycra like how I'm using here, remember we didn't add any seam allowance to it, but still you want to sew with an even bigger seam allowance because this dress actually turned out a little too big for me, and it kind of makes me feel really fat. So I had really a lot of issues with this dress, but I'm still going to show you guys how to make it. You want to go ahead and pin your Lycra layer right sides together to your beading layer. And like I said, this is all the construction and everything that I'm doing here is sound. It works good. I would just take negative ease, a little bit more negative ease from the Lycra layer so that everything fits how it's supposed to fit, and it will fit you better than it fit me. I did forget to put my strap in here, so I will eventually in just a second here make my strap and insert my strap here, because you do want to get your strap caught up in this seam. I think it was 22 inches long, and I just did it the width of my ruler, and I'm cutting it out. I do like to use my ruler to make sure that my strap is as square as possible to make sure that it is even, and I'm just folding both sides to the center and then folding it again to make a strap. You could do it as a loop and turn it right way out if you weren't using beaded fabric, but I didn't even want to deal with having to sew this. I ended up just hand sewing this, this closed, so that I didn't have to deal with knocking off the beads and having to sew such small of a piece. So now that I have the strap done, I'm going to go ahead and put this in between the layers so that we can get it caught up in the seam with the lining, and you won't see the strap from the inside of the dress, if that makes sense. here at the table, I'm going to also mark and sew my darts for our center back piece. I decided to have the center back and the back pieces with darts instead of the pleating or the gathering, whichever way you decide to do it, because I thought it would be less bulky. And then I'm just going to pin both my darts, making sure that I go through the markings on both sides. Okay, so we're back over at the sewing machine, and I'm just going to sew everything that we just pinned over at the table. So to recap, it is the neckline of our bodices, and it also is the pleated portions of the back. Fullness that we added to our front side piece, and I know I need to pleat it down to 5.5, so I'm just kind of pleating and then measuring to see if it's long enough, and then once it is, we can go ahead and put it towards our front slit piece. And if you wanted to base this first, you definitely can. Now I'm putting it up to my my front slit portion, and I am clipping those together, leaving out the lining of the front slit, the front sides. I don't even know what to call it. The front side slit, I guess you'd call it. Now I'm sewing this, and I'm using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I am using my nippers to snip out some of the beads that I guess I missed, and then I'm going to baste the top of this, stopping where the beaded portion of the side slit piece stops. I'm also going to sew my back piece. These are my back pieces, and I've gathered down my overlay. You remember the fullness that we sewed a dart with on the main layer? I'm gathering down that same fullness on the beaded layer, and I'm sewing this down. after I have that sewn down, I'm going to sew my center back seam. Remember, you need to leave that opening for the zipper, so I'm starting around 10 inches down from the waistline, and I'm sewing my center back seam closed. And I'm just inspecting it to see how it looks, and it looks okay. So now it's time to do our bodice portion. Notice that I have the darts facing upwards. It's kind of a, you lose situation because I'm using a transparent overlay. But if you used an overlay that was like a satin or something, then it'll be perfectly fine. I mean, it was fine here. You couldn't even see the darts when it was all finished. So what I'm doing is I'm clipping my overlay to my lining here at the waistline just to make sure that I have it matched up. And now I'm going to pleat down this fullness to the side seam. That all clipped, now we can go to the sewing machine and sew and baste all of this. Really, you want to baste all of this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance down the sides, across the waistline, and up the other side. I also went ahead and just tacked down my straps up on the back. These straps do cross on the back, so it kind of does this thing here. But first, I'm going to take care of this overlay. I'm going to, like I said, sew the side, across the waistline, and up across the other side. Now that I have that done, now it's time to finish off our side seam. I'm going to take my strap from this, my side piece from this side, and I'm just kind of lining them up so I can see, in my brain, I know that they're crossed. Now I'm placing our back piece right sides together with our front piece, and I'm lining up my side seam. I'm going to clip all of this. And then I'm going to wrap our lining piece around this piece that we just clipped and enclose everything. So I'm going to clip it to the other side. So what this does is it literally encloses this whole side seam so that you can't see it from the inside. It's completely finished off and really clean. And I think I'm going to remake this dress in like just a plain satin or something to see how it turns out. Something that's not stretchy. I'm not a stretchy fabric type of person, so I don't even know why I tried. I've been trying to branch out and do things that I don't usually do, but I don't know. It doesn't ever work out when I do it. So I don't know. I'm trying not to be discouraged, y'all, but I'm gonna continue to put them out. So, and I'm just doing the same thing to the other side. And then we can sew this with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Before we go over to the sewing machine, let's go ahead and prep some other pieces. This is my back piece all sewn, and then I have my front piece all sewn. Remember, I didn't catch my lining in it at all. So now I am going to place my back to my front right sides together, and we're going to go ahead and get these side seams all pinned up. I'm going to keep my lining out of it, and I'm going to pin the beaded layer to the beaded layer on top, and I'm going to do that for both of the side seams. Machine, and I'm just sewing everything that we just did. So these are the side seams of the bodice. I'm flipping it the right way out, and look how clean it is. There's no seam, so it's perfect. I really do like this method. I will try it again in the future for finishing off things. And I'm going to sew the other side seam the same way, and then I'm also going to sew the side seams of the skirt. serging the side seams of the Lycra lining. This is my waistline seam. I'm clipping my whole waistline and I'm sewing it completely together. I'm going to do the same, something similar to the way I did the side seam. I'm going to enclose the waistline seam with the lining. So I have the bodice lining on top and then the skirt lining on the bottom, so that when we turn it the right way out, you won't see any seams at all on the inside or the outside of the dress. And then I'm going to press this open. This is a really thick seam, thicker than I would like, so I'm going to go ahead and press it open. And then now I'm doing my zipper. I'm basting my zipper closed. Then I'm going to go to my ironing table and press the seam open. Then I'm going to baste in my zipper. After I baste in the zipper, then I'm going to open the center back seam and then do a final stitch for my zipper. The last step to do is the hem. So for the hem, we're just going to really bag it out. So you want to place your whole dress right sides together and bag it out with the lining. And then you also want to make sure that you leave like an opening. I left an opening at my center back so I can turn my dress right way out. And then I just ended up top stitching the opening to finish it, to close that opening at the back there. You can't even tell because of all the beaded fabric. And then I just gave my hem a really good press. And I also hand stitched the straps off camera. I absolutely hate this dress, y'all. I'm so sorry, but I did promise that I would get a video out this week, so I'm really trying. I have more plans for sewing things that I want to sew. So hopefully those videos turn out better, but I think that it is important for you guys to see my triumphs as well as my fails, and this definitely was not a triumph. So I hope you guys really enjoyed it. These are all of my wonderful channel members as well as my Patreons. All of their names are here on the screen. Thank you guys so much for supporting me throughout December and for many months to come. I really do appreciate you guys more than you understand. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I will try to get a better party dress video out before the end of the week. Hopefully I can get one out. Hopefully I can work on one today and get one out before the end of the week, and I'll see you guys in my next one.